Our brain is trying to say, okay, what's important, what's not. So when you have this huge pile of information and you're trying to get to sleep, I mean, people, like, I do a lot of talks on sleep, and it's like, well, how do I shut my mind off? Like, well, you have to stop feeding it. Like,
right.
Your brain is going to absorb this stuff like a sponge, and then you're going to create this situation where your brain has to determine, is this important, is this not? And unfortunately, things that are very emotional, especially mental health wise, your brain thinks that is crucial information you need to retain.
What does it mean to plant your flag? It means you're not afraid.
It means you're passionate about what you do.
It means you're here to serve others.
In business, in life.
In good and bad.
You aren't afraid to fly your colors proudly because you know
you serve a greater purpose. This is the Plant Your Flag podcast with Mike Bean and Jeremy Mountain. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Plant Your Flag podcast. This is our episode number 9, and we're joined by Jared Byer from Made to Move Fitness. Just wanted to remind everybody to subscribe to whatever platform you're listening or watching on. So, Jared, thanks for coming down and spending some time with us today.
Yeah, Mike, it's great. I mean, it's been a while since I haven't seen you, but yeah, I greatly appreciate this. I've been looking forward to it all week. So.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And I know you get to speak publicly on a regular basis, so I'm glad that you're looking forward to it. And it doesn't seem like, it's just much more than you want to take on.
Yeah, I mean, I really have. In high school, I was a terrible public speaker. I mean, I will admit to that. I was just awful. I would get nervous and get choked up. But since I've been doing all these corporate wellness presentations and seminars, it's been great. I mean, the feedback and just energy from presenting has been awesome.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I want to learn a little bit more about Made to Move Fitness. And it's, like you mentioned, we've known each other, but it's been several years since we've touched base. And I know the business model has changed quite a bit. So what are you up to? What are you doing these days?
Well, when you used to come to my studio and your wife, it was more of a group training studio, more fitness-based. So it was appointments and group training. And in about September of 2019, not knowing the pandemic was coming, I was like, I want to kind of change the business model. I had been doing corporate wellness for like the big insurance companies, more like lunch and learn. So I'd go in and do these talks, and they usually had the talks where they would have like the PowerPoint presentation. I would just come in and present. And then it got to the point where they wanted me to produce my own. So I started creating my own, and 2019 hit, and that was kind of like my lease was up, and things had changed quite a bit in the industry, so I just wanted to kind of follow that model because I have a wife and 5 kids, so I wanted more control time versus like schedule time. So I was like, it's time to go to something else and more virtual, but really on site. So I didn't need the brick and mortar anymore, which was, cutting my costs was huge because that was quite an expensive space. You always think you have your own business, so you look at like all these people you're technically working for, your landlord, insurance, utilities. So it just made sense. And then the pandemic hit, and, it was pretty much at the right place at the right time.
Yeah, like timing seems to be everything. And yeah, you said you have your own business, you're your own boss. And I've said this on a couple other episodes, is that, are you?
Yeah.
So you do have some flexibility,
yes,
but there still is a lot of built-in responsibility that a lot of other people don't think about. And some of those things are really, really gratifying, and some of them are a little bit more challenging.
Yes, definitely.
How do you balance those, the things that maybe you got into that you didn't expect, and that becomes, that responsibility becomes your supervisor and your boss? Yeah,
I mean, the one big thing that I learned is, like you said, you have all the flexibility, but also all the responsibility. So, the number of hats I was wearing, not from just the service end, but, making sure I was paying the bills and just marketing. I mean, that was, when you're a small business, you try to do as much as you can on your own. So a lot of it I did on my own. Some of it just learning the hard way on what, how to really target people and whatnot. So that was the thing, is it was really, my role really changed from being just a service guy to service plus taking on everything with the studio. So I had, several renters that were working with me, so they were kind of helping support some of the stuff. But it's all up to you. I mean, there's lean months. The summers were always, people are not as active indoors. They're doing stuff. They're traveling. So it's just trying to balance that stuff off, and that was the big thing that was always a challenge and still is. The summers are pretty quiet, but we get to travel more, so work harder in the winter.
Yeah, that's cool. And you had mentioned you have 5 kids, so that's a lot in itself.
Yes, it is.
They can be your boss sometimes, I would imagine.
I mean, after school, it's kind of like the dad Uber, driving them to whatever sport or event they have to go to. And luckily, we live in a small village, so there's, it's not too far to drop them off, but it's like drop one off here, come back. So that's definitely a challenge. So making sure that after school hours, my schedule's wide open definitely helps my wife and I.
That's great that you're able to balance that and you've found a road to it. Now, I think the last time I saw you, I think you might have recently had twins. Is that right?
Yeah, so right around that time where I opened the studio, my wife and I had boy-girl twins. They're 13 now, going to be 14 in January. So, yeah, it really flew by. I mean, it's amazing. All these parents tell you, this time is just best time of your life is going to fly by. It's drudgery, just your schedule, but you'll miss it. And that's, kind of where I'm at now. So, really, best time in my life right now. So.
That's awesome. Yeah, and congratulations.
Thank you.
Now the COVID era, it seems like I mentioned before, timing seems to be so important in life. What does go well, what doesn't go well. It seems like your timing lined up fairly well with you making that business transition. How, looking back on it, how happy are you, or did you wish maybe you would have transitioned a little sooner, or was it just the perfect storm?
Yeah, I mean, the whole industry, the health and fitness industry had changed quite a bit, pretty much right toward 2019, whereas like when I first started in the industry in 90, 94, 95, there was big gyms. There weren't any small studios. Everything was like you go to a gym and it's got class and this and that, and yoga and Pilates are there. And then everything started to really segment. So you went to a Pilates studio, you went to a yoga studio. So that really, the whole industry changed in that respect. And it was like, became very competitive being in this area. And it was like, it's not really the model I want to go with. And certain clients, I had many clients for years that were great. And then other clients, like, this is adult babysitting. So not really what I want to do. So I wanted to work with more people in those groups. So it was kind of just a stroke of luck that I was like, it's time to move on from this. And again, because of the competition, all my expenses were increasing. And I want to spend more time with the kids as they're growing up. So that kind of, that transition just worked. And again, no one had any idea the pandemic was coming. But as I mentioned to you before, that basically in the beginning of the corporate wellness stuff, during the pandemic, everything switched to virtual. Everything. I mean, trainers are doing virtual lessons and classes and sessions. And I had several colleagues that had studios, and they were not allowed to be open. So, I couldn't imagine having all that overhead and limited ability to basically pay your bills. So I was really happy that I had made that choice, but felt really bad for other people that didn't. I mean, there's several trainers from my studio opened their own about that time, and it's very tough doing business in that environment. But the virtual thing, that happened quick. So everyone transitioned very quickly.
And with the family aspect, how was it running those virtuals? I guess seminar is not the right word, right? What would you call them?
Yeah, they're virtual seminars, wellness seminars, corporate wellness. I would say the interesting thing was I did actually have COVID twice. And the first time I got it, I had 103 fever, and I had a seminar the next day with like 100 people virtually. Wow. So luckily I wasn't in person. But the thing is, you have to obviously make sure the dog is quiet. And the kid's like, this time, Daddy is busy. You can't come in the room. And there would be times you'd be like, go. So, it was an interesting transition being that the kids were home and trying to do that. So, it worked, but it was definitely challenging. But again, like we had mentioned, that a virtual seminar and trying to, present is you just don't get the energy. It's talking to a screen. You don't get as many questions. So you don't know how you're doing. You don't know if it's really going well or if people are just like, cameras off and they're not even at their screen. So hopefully it worked.
Yeah, because some people have to be there, because it's a requirement. So, but we were talking prior to the cameras rolling, and we were saying there's that energy that you feel in the room when you're doing an in-person presentation, and it's tough to recapture that through the virtual. I mean, you're able to still get that information out, which I think is great. And I've always thought when we were going through all that I think companies and people who are going to thrive after the dust settles are the ones who take some of the pieces that were positive from the pandemic and continue to utilize them, but also separate themselves from the things that they had to use. Right. And I think that, the folks that were still relying on virtual services and thinking that was going to be the end all be all for, here and forever. I think either they probably didn't last all that long, or they had to change their mind partway through.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing with a lot of those seminars, when things started to come back to in person, like I actually would tell groups, like, I am just so happy to be here in front of people again. Like, this is just gives me hope and energy that this is really the right platform. But actually, some companies in the insurance industry went to basically, instead of like having in-person things and things, I'd be doing like, oh, we have health coaches you can talk to online, or we have these pre-recorded things, and people really don't like them because you can't ask questions. It's not personable. It's like watching a commercial or video. So the industry has changed quite a bit in that they're trying to cut costs and do pre-recorded evergreen type things. And some of that stuff is good, but the whole like health industry, everyone's got their own video course, and it's like, yeah, but people want to really engage with you and talk with you instead of just this canned, here's what you do.
Right.
There's got to be room for improvement on that. So I think that's the big thing with, like you said, the industry, like in terms of fitness, like they have that mirror and all these things you can do at home. Like those are great, but at some point, like how are you going to know if you're doing something right?
Right.
And that's the big thing that someone, a trainer or someone that's an expert can guide you versus you watching something and trying to replicate it. You don't know, so you might just be replicating the same mistake over and over again.
Right.
So there's still that place that where people actually are needed. AI can't replace that.
Right.
Yet.
Yeah. I was thinking AI as far as the feedback and taking a presentation and then being able to answer those questions without anybody actually there.
Yeah.
Presenting it. Maybe someday it'll be a little bit more foolproof than it is today. But I think you're pretty safe.
For now.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. For the foreseeable future.
Yes.
With you've done a couple presentations just today, and so what are some of the topics? Either was it today or just some of the topics that you get into?
Well, definitely, especially in the last 4 years, the number one topic is always mental health and stress. So I am not a mental health counselor, but my approach is more from a health coach perspective in terms of like, what are the things you can do to minimize your stress? Everyone has stress. There's many different types of it. How you actually respond to it is the key. So I did one yesterday, one the day before, 2 today, and 1 last week, basically all on stress.
Wow.
And, these are, groups that I'm working with that are under a lot of stress, that have, police, fire, social services people that, they need the support themselves. So that's what I'm there to provide. And the first group this morning was just amazing. Like the question answer was phenomenal.
Yeah.
It was like, yeah, let's ask about this and that. And it was just so free form. And that's what I really enjoy. It was Niagara Falls, so I drove 45 minutes this morning to do it. But that's the kind of energy that I get back from people is they're taking notes. They're, engaged and you don't get that in a virtual talk or seminar.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I stress is certainly, something that is being talked about more. Do you think, based on your experience, because how long have you been in the fitness industry?
About 32 years in the fitness industry and about 10 or 11 doing corporate wellness.
So out of those 3 decades, do you feel that there is more stress in people's lives, or do you think it's being spoken about more, or maybe a little bit of both?
I think it's being spoken about, but there definitely is more stress, and I really think it's just the tech overload. I mean, we are, bombarded by things that are happening that we can't unsee or unhear. And we were talking about this, that I just really needed to take a tech break or media fast in the last week or so. I'm turning 50 in a week and a half, and I'm like, I just need to unload. I mean, I've heard studies saying that, the amount of information we're getting in a day is the amount that we would average a year, like a decade ago. So like, it's just, and it's nonsense. It's stuff that doesn't, our brain, the problem is, when we get ready to go to sleep, our brain is trying to say, okay, what's important, what's not. So when you have this huge pile of information and you're trying to get to sleep, I mean, people, like, I do a lot of talks on sleep, and it's like, well, how do I shut my mind off? Like, well, you have to stop feeding it. Like,
right.
Your brain is going to absorb this stuff like a sponge, and then you're going to create this situation where your brain has to determine, is this important, is this not? And unfortunately, things that are very emotional, especially mental health wise, your brain thinks that is crucial information you need to retain. So, these funny videos and, that kind of stuff, that doesn't really stay in your brain. But the emotional stuff is, with wars and what's going on with, political things, that sticks with you and can really have a negative impact on your mental health, for sure.
Right. Yeah. And now there's probably some tie-ins with activity and helping with sleeping and helping with your stress. So that seems like it would make a ton of sense. Do you ever have anyone kind of second guess, because you mentioned the mental health aspect of it, with your background being more in fitness? Do you ever run into those issues where they think like, well, wait a second, we want a psychologist to be doing this, or what have you?
I mean, I have several colleagues that are mental health counselors and things. And again, that, they're into, therapy. So it's like, very private. They're not doing typically group type things. And a lot of it is like self-help or self-help type approach. And I have a colleague, and she does this awesome thing. It's she calls it net walking, and it's basically she's a mental health counselor, but she does it during a walk. So you're not
awesome.
sitting in an office; you're actually outside, getting fresh air and sun. And just the impact of combining activity and therapy is huge. So
that's
it's just
fantastic.
Yeah, so she does a great thing. I actually personally myself started probably the last 2 months doing my own walk and talk with myself. Early in the morning, I get up. Before my kids get up for school, I usually do my exercise and whatnot in the morning. Some of it's kind of manifesting and kind of directional type stuff, but I'll get up in the morning and, it'll be dark out. I'll put a headlamp on just to kind of light my way. And just talk to myself. And that's something I think we really need to just get away from tech. There's a lot of great things we can do with tech, but there's a lot of things that are overwhelming our brains and bodies. So it's been therapeutic in many ways, and I think we need that personal time, but we also need this social wellness. We need to be around people that, support us. And I think that especially post-pandemic, people are still coming out of that, and mental health has been the biggest thing. So anything you can do for yourself. But in terms of fitness and exercise component, I am not like pushing people to go to a gym. I promote what really movement does for your body. So Made to Move Fitness is all about movement. It's not about weightlifting and whatnot. I mean, I've trained pro athletes, Olympic athletes, soccer. I've done everything, seniors. And, pretty much everyone's bodies work the same way. They're different levels, obviously, and age things. But the main thing is that you want to do something that's going to improve your health, not just like how much you can lift. And the gym industry really has changed drastically since I first got into it. I actually joined a gym, I don't know, maybe 6 months ago, and I was so turned off by the experience because there's people like, videotaping themselves.
Yes.
And like, you don't really even know what you're doing exercise-wise, and there's a lot of like quote-unquote experts out there that it's kind of scary what they're promoting because they're copying what someone else did, and they don't know if that person knew what they were doing. They're just trying to, so it's pretty scary what you see.
Yeah, now that you mention it, it's kind of like like the telephone game, I think we used
Yeah.
to call it, where someone tells someone, and then the message is totally different by the time it gets to the end user or the end recipient of the message. And now I'm thinking about it while you're talking. With these videos and with social media, it's really that telephone game on steroids. And by the time you get to the other end, that exercise, that movement is probably completely manipulated.
Yeah.
And it gets more like, so it must be better. Right.
Yeah. I mean, when you look back at like, obviously the old like health and fitness magazines, like how many times can you write a bicep workout or an ab routine? Like that horse has been beaten and buried for years.
Yeah.
But, it sold magazines. I mean, then they switched to like, oh, here's like a 5-page thing in the middle of it, which you think is like a research article, but really it's just something that a supplement company put together. So, that's really changed a lot. Sports nutrition is just crazy huge now. But yeah, it's like this has been done so many times, but really trying to carve out a special, like a target market is really, I think, the right way to do things. And this just general stuff.
Yeah.
Most fitness is just bodybuilding, which is really not for health.
Mm-hmm.
It actually can create more problems than it solves. So being almost 50, my big thing is like, I want to be mobile.
Right.
Mobility is huge. Like I want to be able to hike and do stuff with my kids, and they keep me young. I mean, they play sports, so I do things with them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, as we age, there's different things that happen decade by decade in terms of exercise. But the main thing that I really promote with exercise is the movement medicine. That's a big term you see nowadays. And, your doctors tell you, exercise and eat better, but they don't really they won't give you a plan or tell you what to do. So It's like you need someone that knows what to do versus saying, okay, let's go to the gym and do this. And there's just too much of that out there. So that's something I've been trying to speak out against, because like what you see as mainstream is not really health.
Right.
There's a lot of these influencers, fitness influencers, are just promoting products or promoting services. They're doing things that are sometimes dangerous.
Right. And like you had mentioned, magazine articles and things like that. And as we both date ourselves here, we're within the same age range, about 5 years apart. But you, I imagine, saw things that you didn't align with. Is that what helped you plant your flag? Because you were seeing things in the industry that you felt you could do better?
Yeah, most definitely. Again, I had worked in gyms, several gyms over the years, big gyms, small gyms, studios. And it was like, again, a lot of it was influenced by muscle and fitness magazines, health and fitness magazines. And that's bodybuilding. I mean, Arnold did so much for that industry, and, he's still an icon for that. But, he's aging, and he's, had heart surgery and things like that. But, that's not really what health is about. That's more for aesthetics. So in your, teens and 20s, you want to be this, peacock to attract mates.
Right.
A lot of my clients are in their 40s and 50s. Like, yeah, I did that, but that's not me anymore. Like, I just want to get out of bed and not be sore. I want to not sit at work all day and barely be able to move. I want to have energy to do things and travel. And that's a big thing. I mean, I love travel, and I think that's what, as we age, we want to be able to experience other places and just get away from that. That's just things that I really enjoy myself.
Right. What else went into why you decided to plant your flag? Was it upbringing? Was it, just like we mentioned, like I mentioned, the idea that there's a different way to do things in the way that you were seeing or the people you were working for? What kind of went into that?
Well, I worked for some companies that were not necessarily on the up and up. Had some business partners that were not the most honest people.
Right.
And I had, definitely a sense of making sure I'm doing things the right way. And they weren't. So breaking off and starting my own LLC was really just my way of like, I've learned all these things in the industry, and now I want to do things my way. So I want to be the one that's not going to be, pushing heavyweight and focusing on, mirror muscles. This is like things that you should do, because I originally had gone to school for physical therapy. I came to Buffalo in '92 for that. And I really wanted to, model what I was doing to really help people move better. And that's where the whole made to move fitness thing came in. And actually came to me in a dream. I was trying to think of what is, this is important. I have to come up with a DBA name, and it just came to me. And then when I ended up filing LLC. Same thing. I'm like trying to think about it. I go to bed and popped in my head in the middle of the night. And that's Strive to Thrive Health. So they both have the number 2 in them, but it came to be. And Strive to Thrive Health is my LLC. And then I have other specialty programs underneath that. But yeah, that's where that kind of came from.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I 2006, I think we both filed those DBAs.
Yeah.
What month was it?
I don't recall, but it was kind of a weird thing where I had to go downtown. They had like these ancient books look like they're from like Harry Potter. Like, oh, you got to go look through there and make sure it's not in there. I'm like, there's no easier way. Like,
isn't it unbelievable?
Yeah, it was really a weird experience. So again, I just needed that so I could get a checking account and do everything for my business that way. But yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah, I first went and I went online and I found this service that I thought was going to do it for me. And essentially it just it cost me $35. And I was like, okay, well, that's normal because that's what Erie County charges. Yeah. But it was $35 for them to fill the paperwork out to send it to me so then I can go and take it downtown and do it myself.
Oh, gee.
So I started off on a great foot. But yeah, I do remember the date. It was the 29th of June, 2006. Wow. So I'm kind of strange with dates like that.
Yeah, I'm not good with dates. I remember the year, but that's about it. That's obviously not of utmost importance in my brain.
Sure.
So no, dates and numbers are not my big thing. Weird things with clients, like, oh, you had this injury. How's that? I have this weird thing that my wife's like, that's just a weird. You remember things that are, your importance level on certain things is just different than other people.
I saw something in a movie where it was Ryan Phillippe. He had mentioned saying that his mind is the endless capacity for useless information.
I probably have that similar mind.
Yeah.
Useless at certain things.
Right. Well, but you never know when it's going to pop up.
Yeah.
And I would imagine with all the different people you meet and the people you talk to, sometimes that stuff becomes relevant.
Yeah, definitely. For sure.
Now, crazy story. What is the craziest thing that you've seen in business so far?
Well, the craziest one that I still think about is I actually got this letter from federal prison.
Okay.
And it was like, handwritten. And I opened it up and it's like this letter, handwritten letter. I think it was like 2 pages long. It had a photograph in it.
I'm bracing myself because I've asked this question before and I've gotten some really bizarre answers.
Well, this one was bizarre in the fact that at the time I was training some FBI agents and law enforcement, and the letter basically said, "Hey, I'm writing you from prison, and my girlfriend and I are looking to have children when I'm done serving my sentence in federal prison." And she'd be a great, she would follow whatever you do. She needs to lose weight and get healthy before we have children. And again, there was the picture in there.
Is that a normal thing? Is it to conceive? I don't have kids.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely people that need, there's a lot of hormonal things, especially, it could be the father or mother. I mean, I've had several friends that have had to do IVF and things like that. But yeah, so he was like, she wants to get healthy and in order to have kids. So I was like, and he's like, she would do this and she'd be your model client. You could use her for marketing and show all this progress. So I was like, okay, that's a little strange. And then I end up like, I tell one of my clients who's an FBI agent, she's like, look him up. It's federal, so you can see what they did. And he was in prison for child pornography. So I was like,
yikes.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what it's called, but there's a thing where women, I don't know if they get engaged or attracted to people that are incarcerated, even if they're not like working there or guards or something. So I'm assuming that's what this was. And I'm just like, I am not doing anything with this, but it's pretty sad that a woman would think like, hey, this would be a good father.
Be a good father. And like right out of the gate, he's saying, you've got to drop some LBs and you're going to be on a commercial for Made to Move Fitness.
So that was probably the strangest. Yeah. I had one client, all she wanted to do was train her abs. Like she was pretty fit, but the entire session was just abs. So I'm like, not what I would recommend, but all right. And she was, really enjoyed it. And I'm just like, here's what you can do. This is not really.
I picture that big on movies and things. The Step Brothers with Adam Scott. where he like they clearly cut to like a model. And he's like in the treehouse, you know that scene, and he pulls up his shirt.
Movie.
He's like, I haven't had a carb since whatever day. And that's kind of what I'm envisioning with this. But I would imagine it's like somebody. Is there ever a point where you have to step in and say, I understand this is what you want to do, but for me to do what's right, I can't just focus on this one body part day in and day out.
I mean, that one wasn't as extreme. We did have the one gym I worked at. There was a girl that would come in. And she would weigh herself before she started exercising. She'd exercise a ton. And she was just losing weight. I mean, she had bulimia or anorexia. And we just basically had to kind of not stop her membership, but get her help.
Yeah.
And that was definitely a serious situation because it was in plain sight. And you see people like that. Sometimes you'd be out shopping and there's, and again, it's a mental health thing. It's not something that the average person, especially a trainer, can handle. So they need professional help. So that was that, and if the woman that only wanted to do abs was like, all right, she's already fit. She just wants to be super cut. I'm like, all right, we'll do that a couple times. And it's not really. Right.
Yeah, because like I said, those are the things that I find to be interesting on because with marketing, sometimes I have to figure out how do I toe that line because I'm not necessarily like a business coach or a business consultant. But when it gets to the point where you're seeing some things that aren't happening on the other end, it's like we can lead the horse to water, but we can't make them drink. And so that's where do you step in? But when you're talking about someone's health, I guess both are very serious. People's income and their health. Those are some pretty serious things.
I mean, I would say the big thing of this term, and I like it, I don't know where it came from, but ask hole would be someone that asks for your advice but doesn't follow it. I've done that so many times with nutrition. Oh, what should I be eating? Okay, I'll put all this stuff together for you. And a week later, how's it going? Oh, yeah, I did something else. All right. Yeah. So, I mean, nutrition-wise, I'm not a nutritionist or dietitian. I've had tons of training in that. It's not really something that I've done lots of talks on food nutrition. I grew up on a farm, and I do things like that. So it's those are kind of frustrating when you give them, here's the path.
Yeah.
But then they're on some other path. And, people are always looking for, the pasture always greener on this side. I can do this easier. And shortcuts. I mean, the biggest thing right now, and actually the talk on Wednesday this was brought up, and I usually speak about it, but GLP-1s, which are basically these new weight loss drugs.
Oh, that's what I've heard people talk about.
Wegovy and all that stuff. There's a bunch of different semaglutide. So that is going to be the next epidemic, is just people that think they can take a shortcut for their health, but they're if I had one client, long-term client, that had sent me information on, said, what do you think about it? So I'm like, flat out, no. I could never endorse it, and as your advisor, I would advise you against it. Because even if you go on the website, and I forget which one it was, but the website read like a liability statement saying you want to lose weight, but here's all the stuff that it can do. So I'm telling you in advance, this might not be so good for your health.
Right.
Because your objective is you want to lose weight, and that is your only thing you care about.
Right.
So it's kind of like the whole idea of steroids and young athletes. If you do this, it could destroy your health and you could, end your life prematurely, but look what you could potentially have. You could be this, celebrity and millionaire. So I think that's a big thing that is really, it's going to be this $1 trillion industry. And there's just so many things that people don't most of my clients, and some wanted to gain weight, but most clients want to lose weight, typically be healthier. And for the most part, if you focus on weight loss, that is the wrong target.
Yeah.
Changing your lifestyle changes that output. So you change the input to get a different output. And that's really the thing that a drug will not do. I mean, you see any drug commercial, and the biggest thing, which, again, a lot of the marketing and whatnot I've researched, is that basically we're more visual than we are auditory when it comes to advertising, right? So when you see these commercials with a guy throwing football and everyone's happy, and then all of a sudden you start hearing this low-tone voice talking about the potential side effects for some super minor thing that that's an issue for you, may cause this. An antidepressant may cause suicide.
I know. Yeah.
It is
They say it
beyond
in a
ridiculous.
happy voice too.
Yeah.
It may cause suicide. Are you thinking about killing yourself?
Yeah, exactly.
Like it's just like, oh, well, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Totally
Want to
normal.
quit smoking or kill yourself?
Right.
You choose.
Yeah. Well, that's all. What's the worser or the greater evil or what have you? So that is now the weight loss drug that you're thinking may unfortunately become an epidemic.
Yes.
Is that the same thing as it's like diabetic medication or something like that?
A lot of those had been used for diabetes for years. Now, diabetes is like the worst chronic illness you could ever have. It's basically your body's decomposing over time. Sugar is just wreaking havoc on your body. So, it does help for a diabetic to manage their blood sugar.
Right.
But for the average person, it's not doing that. It's a stomach hormone that's released to tell you you're full. Mm-hmm. So in essence, GLP-1 is one of those hormones. GLP-2 is 2. GLP-3, which hasn't come out yet, is 3 hormones. So it's basically telling you, like, I'm good. I don't have to eat.
Wow.
But what does that do to your body? Your body, especially your brain, is, requires. Like, food is an emotional thing. Like, we get joy from eating.
Yeah.
This removes the joy from eating. It removes the feeling to eat. So it's like a self-induced starvation.
Right.
So, it's not about willpower. Willpower is, choosing the right thing and staying away from or having moderation. This is saying, like, you're not even going to want that.
Right.
But in order for this stuff to actually have hit the market, obesity needed to be declared a disease. And for years, doctors had a hard time telling their patients that they're obese because that was offensive. It was like blaming them. So when you turn the blame to saying it's not your fault, it's a disease you have, and now there's a disease, now drugs can be made for that. So it's been a long time coming, but again, these things, like you said, have been used for diabetics for quite a long time, and now diabetics are having a problem getting these things. But again, if you just look at, for someone that's not diabetic, that doesn't have these health problems, that just wants to lose weight, if you look at the potential side effects, I don't see why you would take them.
Right.
But, it's huge in Hollywood. Like, all these celebrities that all of a sudden, boom, they lose all this weight. Like, they're not exercising to do that. And, exercise is hard. Working out is hard. But there's so many benefits to doing that you release hormones, feel-good hormones. Like, most people have a hard time getting started exercising, even if it's just for the day, but you always feel better afterwards because you get that sweat, you get the circulation boost, and your muscles release myokines, which are basically these hormones that make you feel good. It's kind of like squeezing a lemon. So that hormone that comes out when you work a muscle hard, number one, it gives you a feel-good feeling.
Yeah.
Number two, it reduces pain because when you're actually exercising, you're actually tearing muscle tissue, so it's painful.
Right.
Your nerves feel that. So it's actually kind of like
good burn, right?
Yeah. Yeah, swole burn, like all that stuff. So you feel really good, but a lot of people have a hard time getting motivated to do that. But once you do it, you always feel better. So that's kind of my approach to trying to teach people, especially with stress management. Like, activity and exercise are very therapeutic. It's movement medicine. So if you see the benefit and you feel better, it's probably going to help you stay on track.
I think it may make more sense to somebody who has owned a business because it's like the cost benefit analysis. It's like you have to think about, you put this in and you get that, So I can see if you think about the outcome and feel good, and you remind yourself of that when you're like sluggish and lazy, that remember how good I felt that time after, and that's something you have to just keep coming back to.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what people strive for. I mean, they just really want to feel good. I mean, I've had people that have say, okay, I want to lose this weight. They get to that weight and how do you feel? Like, I'm kind of starved myself. It's kind of hard to keep that. And they're not really necessarily happy. A bigger thing that I promote is basically, it's called downsize. So basically what it means is, instead of looking at the number on the scale, look at the number or the size of your clothing. So, there's a lot of things with body composition where typically people that exercise properly, your clothes, get looser because you're losing muscle mass or losing body fat, but your muscle mass is growing, but it takes up a lot less space. Like there's a picture of 5 pounds of fat versus 5 pounds of muscle.
Right.
And it's like a third the size.
Yeah.
So the scale really lies. I mean, there's a lot of negativity around the scale, and I understand it because it doesn't show composition. Your weight is actually the sum of 6 parts. It's not one number, and those are broken down based on your composition. So a lot of it's just like teaching people about basic, anatomy and physiology and trying not to make it complicated, but that's what people really strive for. They want to feel good, and looking good does make you feel good, but just getting to a certain number never really works.
And I would imagine that adds to the stress
Yeah.
as well, because you're constantly checking back in on that,
Yeah.
and it's kind of anti-productive.
Yeah,
you know,
totally.
counterproductive, I guess is the word.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, again, that number on the scale is, it can fluctuate. I mean, how much hydration, how much you ate. If you had a big meal, that's still passing through your body. It doesn't mean
Right.
you gained 5 pounds, but,
Yeah.
a heavy meal sitting in your stomach or several meals for the day, you step on the scale and, well, how did I gain all this weight?
Right.
Next day, you're changed. So really, your weight will fluctuate by, 5 to 7 pounds
Right.
per day, and also different scales are different. I mean,
Yeah.
I've done that many times where like the scale is way off,
Right.
And body fat scales are a big thing, and a lot of people have them in their homes, and they are just a shot in the dark
I was just gonna say
and
that-
not a consistent shot in the dark. It's
Yeah.
not like, hey, we're always 2% off. It's like based on your hydration, it can be a total number. If you're
Right.
dehydrated, it can be a different number. So there's a lot of, health and wellness products out there that mean well, but actually can create more stress than they can relieve.
Right. Yeah. That no, that lines up, and it probably doesn't make your job easier. How are we doing on time, Armando?
We're about 40.
Okay. So we, obviously wanted to talk about business. We want to learn a little bit more about, why you did it. And I think we, accomplished a lot of that stuff. But one thing I don't think we really spoke about, though, is how does someone get in touch with you if they're looking to bring you on to speak, or if you are still doing any kind of personal training and things like that?
I mean, basically made2movefitness.com, the number 2, not TO. That's my main director to get people to me. Mostly what I'm doing now is more the wellness seminars, corporate wellness. So it's workplace wellness. So I'm going on site to places, and it's based on, the workforce. Are they sedentary? Are they desk bound? What are the issues they're going to have? The whole sitting is the new smoking thing. Even if you're not smoking, you might have a lot of similar, negative consequences of just not being active
Right.
at work. So I do still do, some private coaching, some is virtual. A lot of it I prefer in person, but made2movefitness.com is my direct route. And then I'm on LinkedIn. I do a lot with business to business. That's a lot of my business now is working with companies. And then from there, participants or attendees will message me and say, hey, I want to do this or that. So that's pretty much the best way to get in touch, either LinkedIn or made2movefitness.com.
Yeah, that's great. And now, as far as what regions, are you just doing Western New York, or do you go outside the area?
Niagara and Erie County, mostly Erie County. There's some in the southern tier I do. A lot of superintendent's days for schools. Like teachers and faculty are my best clients. They're the most compliant, and they're, examples for their students. So by helping them, it's really helping,
Right.
future generations. So, it varies, but small to medium-sized businesses, some large businesses, things like that.
Very cool. Well, congratulations on the newest chapter. I wish I would have learned about it a little bit sooner, but I'm glad that we got back in touch and were able to do this.
That was awesome.
Yeah, I'm glad you had fun. You did a great job. So we'll have to have you back, and I want to also wish you a birthday in advance.
Thank you.
And who knows, maybe we'll drop this on your birthday. We'll see
Yeah,
if we can
that'd
do
be
that.
awesome.
Yeah.
5 decades.
Yeah. It's very
Doesn't
good.
feel like it, but man, it flies by. So
You're looking good.
thank you.
All right.
I do what I can.
You look same as
Stay young.
when I saw you last 10 years ago. or
That's
whatever it
good.
was.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
Slow the aging process.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, hey, everybody out there, I want to thank you once again for tuning into another episode of Plant Your Flag here at Beam Media Productions. Just a reminder, if you haven't already subscribed, please do. And if you're on YouTube, hit that little bell button. It's down here, I believe. Maybe it's over here. So yeah, go ahead and hit that. You'll get a notification every time we put up a new episode. You won't miss one that way. Thanks again. Have a great day.
Take care.
All right, there we go. Yeah, normally we usually talk fuller.